In preparation for that meeting, the Northern Union Liaison Committee held a conference today, attended by the National President of the Miners' Federation, John Maitland, Secretary Barry Swan, and delegates of all the merger groups like Elcom, Newcom, BHP and Coal and Allied. Also present was the National Secretary of the Metalworkers Union, Jack Kidd, who took part in discussions with Prime Minister Hawke in Canberra last week. Reports on this and discussions before the Joint Coal Board on Saturday formed the basis of recommendations to be put to the aggregate meeting tomorrow. A late report said striking C&A employees would be urged to return to work in keeping with the union undertaking on a moratorium, but this could not be confirmed. In town today to deliver the weekly address to Rotary was the Executive Director of the Colliery Proprietors Group, the Coal Association, which covers 90 mines, employing 20,000 people. Dr. Barry Ritchie said the industry's only hope of survival in a more competitive world market is to reduce costs. To that end, he called for reductions in government charges and a 20% increase in productivity. Dr. Ritchie said this would enable prices to be dropped, retrenchments to be minimised and market share increased. Dr. Ritchie also drew comparisons between Queensland and New South Wales employment conditions, saying Queensland mines operate all year round, mines here have no weekend rosters and frequent holidays. Dr. Ritchie said mining unions here apply policies developed in the days of labour-intensive underground mines to a sophisticated, technologically advanced open-cut industry.
The critical need is for flexibility for companies to reach individual mine site agreements with their workforce to work their individual mine in the most appropriate manner to suit their conditions and markets. And each mine has very different requirements. The needs of a totally modern mining industry, competing in a world market with very low prices, now must be faced up to.
The National Safety Council helicopter touched down at Williamtown just after 5:30 this afternoon. 30-year-old Dennis Hume of East Sale in Victoria was the first man carried to a waiting ambulance. He had spent 4 hours in freezing conditions on Mount Barrington today, hanging in a tree after his parachute had become tangled. The second man, 25-year-old Brendan Heslin from Raymond Terrace, was next out. Both men were wrapped in thermal recovery capsules, suffering from exposure. They also have sore backs after the ejection from the Mackie jet, which crashed about 10:30 this morning. And so after a gruelling day in freezing temperatures and rugged terrain, the two young airmen will now spend the night in the medical centre here at the Williamtown RAAF base. The Mackie jet was on a routine flight from Amberley Air Base in Queensland to Williamtown when it crashed. The first mayday reached air traffic controllers at 10:30 in the morning. The 21-year-old trainer aircraft based at the Central Flying School at Sale in Victoria went down north of Mount Barrington in icy conditions. The two pilots ejected just seconds before the plane crashed in a place ironically called Devil's Lookout. A search began using homing devices fitted to the pilot's seats. From the word go, the whole operation was conducted in a joint operation between the Air Force and the National Safety Council helicopters.
It was blowing snow, icing conditions, the cloud was down to 100 feet and the wind was 45 knots. We were unable to get the helicopter any closer, but with the use of electronic homing devices, we ascertained the position of the two ejectees. We then landed at a homestead and took a bearing basically from the homestead where we landed to where they were, which was 5 miles. We then sent a ground party in to locate the two ejectees. One ejectee was on the ground and the other ejectee was still hanging by his parachute harness in the trees.
It was just after 5:30 in the evening when the lucky pilots touched down in their Iroquois search and rescue helicopters. The first man carried to a waiting ambulance was 30-year-old Dennis Hume of East Sale. He'd spent 4 hours hanging in a tree 13 metres off the ground after his parachute became tangled. The second man was 25-year-old Brendan Heslin from Raymond Terrace. Both were wrapped in thermal recovery capsules, suffering from exposure and back injury.
They certainly wouldn't have been able to spend the night up there.
They spent the night in the RAAF Medical Centre and tomorrow will assist a court of inquiry which will try and find the cause of the crash.
Hello, I'm Janelle Provost. 7,400 miners have decided to go back to work and stop industrial action today. The reason given is they want to comply with the Prime Minister's recommendations for a 1-month moratorium. Now they're calling on the coal companies to also abide by their conditions and stop retrenchments.
For all the news,
Join us tonight
at 6.
For Rachel, the Maureen Connolly Drinker Cup was another triumph in her remarkable career. Not only did she defeat America's #1 ranked under-16s player, Debbie Marangello, but the 15-year-old, teaming up with Belinda Potter, won the under-16 doubles. But the talented youngster won't have time to bask in the euphoria. After a short rest, she's off to compete in the McDonald's International Challenge and then later this year in the World Youth Championships. Rachel says the win in New York was a great experience.
Well, actually, it was pretty exciting because most of them were going for us. I don't know why, but our billets were really great and they were supporting us 100% all the way. And the Americans were very loud and they were cheering twice as loud as us. It's pretty hard to play against a competitive team like the Americans because they are so, on top of you all the time. They know what it's like because they've played a lot of tough players. And I'm just glad I experienced that because it's good.
So what next?
Well, next is the McDonald's International Challenge and that starts next Monday. We go to Melbourne and we have a couple of days practice there and then we get stuck into that. And that leads up to the Entertainment Centre, which is at Sydney. That's in a couple of weeks' time too, so that'll be good.
And you're feeling confident?
Yeah, I'm flying well and I think I'll go well, yeah.
The annual Basden Lecture honours the first warden of the Newcastle University College, the late Ralph Basden. A chemist, Mr Basden was a major contributor in the development of the university in the 50s. The lecture, organised by the Newcastle branch of the Royal Australian Chemical Institute, was presented by Professor Morgan, Newcastle University's Vice-Chancellor. He spoke on the need for more research funding from the private sector.
In Australia we do really quite well in terms of government funding for research. Nobody in the university would say we've got enough, but what we're really short of is funding from the commercial and business sector. Australia is badly underfunded for research from that sector.
In that case, should universities and colleges of advanced education and the like set up marketing themselves to gain these funds?
Well, I think this is something that's happening already and will happen increasingly in the future. Here in Newcastle we've got TUNRA, the university company, and this is a very important aspect of the university's work in terms of raising money for university activities in general, research in particular.
The delegates called the meeting to report on Monday's discussions in Sydney at the Trades and Labour Council with executives from the Bond Corporation. At the meeting, the Bond representative said that the closure was caused by a downturn in demand and there was no way of postponing the August 25th deadline. The maintenance workers have started a petition with the hope of pressuring local politicians into action. Metal Workers Union delegate Ray Page says the general belief within the plant is that the management wants to sweep the brewery clean of employees and start again with just one union instead of 4.
We feel that maybe there could have been a deal done somewhere with one of the unions to maybe open up later on with a one union plant and not have maintenance as such, but bring in contract labour for maintenance. As I say, it's purely speculation.
The bond executives that you met yesterday, they didn't rule out the possibility of starting the plant up again?
No, they said that if there was an upswing in the market, then there's all possibility that the plant could reopen.
The Port Stephens Shire Council last night accepted an offer from Tony Roche to buy the site at Bagnall Road. The 5 times Wimbledon doubles champ paid the council $400,000 for the land on which he will build a resort with motel and villa units, a conference centre, a restaurant and tennis courts. This afternoon, Tony Roche and Deputy Shire President Councillor Bill Hollier finalised the deal. It's Roche's first venture into this type of project. He hopes to start work on the complex as soon as details are finalised with the council, with the opening planned for early next year. It's also expected many of the world's top players will stay at the resort in the run-up to future Australian Opens.
Well, we hope to have the similar or the same type of surface that they're having at the National Tennis Centre, so I would see a lot of the top players coming through and preparing at our resort before going on to the national titles.
$3,000 coal and allied employees went back to help keep a moratorium on industrial action and retrenchments intact. They went on strike over stand-downs, which resulted from overtime bans. And while those bans have now been lifted, the peace is still fragile. Coal and Allied told its workers today that it wants 8-hour instead of 7-hour shifts, no bath time, production during meal times and at Easter and Christmas, limited production Friday nights and Saturdays, and reduced bonuses. Unions are yet to reply to those proposals. But the big threat to industrial peace at the moment is BHP's plans to divest itself of 130 Saxonvale employees. Unions say if the sackings go ahead on Friday, they would no longer be bound by the terms of the moratorium. And this evening, BHP collieries said that since the notices predate the Prime Minister's moratorium moves, they will stand. Talks on this will be held in the Joint Coal Board tomorrow. And in another late development today, BP Coal let it be known to unions that it wants to talk about cutbacks at its Hazeltine underground mine near Liddell, their Howick open cut and its 2 washeries.
The issue of longwall mining is a delicate one in the city of Lake Macquarie. Mining is the city's largest industry and thousands of people's livelihoods depend on the mining companies finding new ways of extracting the coal. This often means using state-of-the-art longwall mining techniques. And while residents agree that everything should be done to help the beleaguered coal industry, they don't want longwall mining under their homes. The 4-month-long debate culminated last night in a public meeting called by the Mayor of Lake Macquarie, Alderman Jeff Pasterfield. Speakers included representatives from 4 major coal companies, the Department of Industrial Relations, which issues the mining permits, the Mine Subsidence Board and the Hunter District Water Board. For residents, the opportunity to obtain information from the government bodies and companies was a godsend after months of time-consuming dead ends.
It's taken 3 or 4 months of very hard work to find out the departments that are relevant, the people who influence the decision, and to develop credible reports and recommendations and submissions.
After some 3 hours, the meeting resolved to call for a freeze on all longwall mining under residential areas and the lake foreshore. The resolution will be put to the Minister for Industrial Relations, Pat Hills, for his consideration.
Australian wool is in strong demand, and that was reflected in today's trading at the opening of the new season sales in Newcastle. Wool from the Upper Hunter, Northwest Slopes and Plains and the New England went under the hammer for very healthy prices. The highest price paid was for 7 bales of Super 3A from Cesta Border Proprietary Limited, Armidale. They went to the Japanese mills Ito for 1,360 cents a kilo.
600, 600 cents, 601, 10, 11, 611 cents, 611 cents is a boo, up 39 is 400.
Tremendous competition in the sale room from all sections of the trade, buying houses operating on behalf of Japan, Korea, Eastern and Western Europe, and all the major countries that can take wool were keen. And the market indicator I would expect it probably could finish very close to 810 cents.
That's a bit of a record then, isn't it?
That is an all-time record, and the market itself, for all descriptions, compared to the Sydney close last week, was from somewhere between 6 to 7% dearer for everything: the merino fleece, crossbred fleece, skirtings, cardings, and the whole range of types. So it has been quite a remarkable day.
What's been the quality of fibre presented today?
Well, a fairly good cross-section of offering, mainly wools from the Northwest Slopes and Plains, smaller offerings from the tablelands, and crossbred wools, and also from the Upper Hunter, and even some small clips from the Lower Hunter.
Where's the demand coming from at the moment?
A very, very strong inquiry from Japan, naturally with the strength of the yen against the Australian dollar. That's giving them great purchasing power. And also Korea, they were in the market today, and also I believe some forward sales made to China. I believe the woolen pipeline overseas, that the supply of stocks and yarn, tops and yarn is very much reduced. And you must remember also that the Australian Wool Corporation stockpile is now down somewhere in the 340,000 bale range, and a very narrow range of types. And this is making the market here, because buyers can't fall back on the stockpile. They've only got a limited range of types in the stockpile, and as such they've got to get into the sale room and buy on the available wools that are now coming forward.
Wool's enjoying a bit of a resurgence, isn't it? Is it right across the board in all fibres, or is it just the superfine?
It's quite remarkable right across the board, from the finest merinos, superfine merinos, right through to the broadest crossbreds, and then even the lower end of the clip, what we call the carding trade for feltings, furnishings, drapes and that sort of thing, which takes locks, lambs and crutchings. They're in very, very keen demand as well.
Well, this must say something about Newcastle as an important selling point, mustn't it?
Yes, it certainly does, and I guess a lot of money's changed hands today. We've had a big attendance of growers, and they're out, I think, now probably spending some of their well-earned monies in the shops.
Meantime, the new wool handling facility being built by Elders Pastoral at Wickham is due to receive its first bales by the end of this month. And according to Elders Wool Operations Manager Barry Nelligan, it proves Newcastle's importance as a wool handling centre.
We're seeing a new wool warehousing facility being constructed for Elders Pastoral by the Balderstone Hornibrook Group, which is 160,000 square feet in area and will handle roughly 30,000 bales of wool.
What sort of commitment to wool facilities in Newcastle does that represent from Elders?
Well, it's a long time since we've seen a wool store built in Newcastle, but it represents an outlay of roughly $3 million by the Elders Pastoral Group. We certainly see Newcastle remaining as a wool warehousing facility, and I believe there's every opportunity it could even grow in size.
And a good thing, of course, for the Hunter Valley.
Very much so. Obviously, we are making a substantial commitment, and we would not be making that substantial commitment unless we saw a future for Newcastle.
The fight for the SRA section to be dedicated as Parkland has been going on for many years, always in the background but never really gaining wide public support. It took the discovery of the convict stockade, the first evidence of industry in Australia, to throw it back into the limelight. The find came only 1 week before the land was due to be auctioned for development. Then, on Wednesday night, there were strong calls at a public meeting at City Hall demanding the area be saved from developers. Today, Transport Minister Ron Mulock answered that call and offered the land as a gift to Newcastle City Council. The funds from the sale of the $3 million land parcel would have gone part of the way towards paying for the relocation of the rail yards at Broadmeadow. Now, Mr Mulock says, the SRA will have to sell some of its other assets to pay for the move. Mr Mulock has put the onus on the Newcastle City Council to pay for the railway equipment to be removed and for the beautification of the site.
A few of the Falcons sleeping there. That's not too much blocking out there on those rebounds. Ball into Johnson, takes the drive, a little bit off balance, but's prepared to take the shot.
The Falcons ran hot and cold last night. In the first quarter, good shooting gave them a 2-point lead at the break, but the second quarter was another story. Shooting dropped off, and so did rebounding, giving the Supersonics the necessary room to slip away to a 69-60 half-time lead. The Falcons fought back in the third quarter to within 1 point, but once again lacked finishing fire in the final session and lost by 6 points, 125 to 119.
With the three-point range again, he's hot.
Meanwhile, the Park Royal Hunters pulled one out of the bag this afternoon at the Broadmeadow Stadium in the South Eastern League match against Adelaide's Woodville Warriors. After playing a poor defensive first half and being down 54-39 at the midway mark, the Hunters battled back to win 99-97. Top scorer for the locals was Jeff Carter with 38. It's a big day for the Hunters. They are now on their way to Sydney to play in the grand final of the Sydney Conference competition.
Police say the robber made 2 daring hold-ups in the Newcastle district yesterday morning. The first was at the Mobile service station on the corner of Llewellyn Street and Glebe Road, Merewether. After purchasing some chewing gum, the robber produced a sawn-off .22 calibre rifle and demanded money from the till. Just 2.5 hours later, the robber made his second hit, this time at the Caltex service station on the corner of King and Charles Street, Warners Bay. He escaped on foot. The bandit is described in his early 20s, of short build, with olive skin and shoulder-length hair. He was last seen wearing blue jeans, a camel-coloured jacket and carrying a canvas backpack. Police say the similarities between the two robberies points to the same offender and warn the man should not be approached.
Well, of course, in this sort of situation, anyone who is carrying a weapon and produces it in such a way would have to be regarded as being possibly dangerous.